June 7th, 1992. The sun had barely risen over Springfield, Missouri. The streets were quiet. Lawns still glistened with the last traces of morning dew. It was the kind of peaceful Sunday that promised nothing more than sleeping in after a long night of graduation celebrations. At a modest home on East Delmer Street, everything appeared ordinary. 3 cars sat neatly in the driveway. Nothing looked disturbed. No broken windows. No frightened neighbors. No sign that, just a few hours earlier, something had happened inside this house that would become one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. A friend walked toward the front door, expecting nothing more than to wake 2 exhausted teenagers who had stayed out celebrating their high school graduation. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. Thinking they were simply asleep, she reached for the doorknob. It wasn't locked. The door slowly opened. Inside, the television was still on. A small Yorkshire Terrier wandered through the living room, calm and unharmed. 3 purses rested together. Inside them were wallets, cash, identification, even the car keys. Outside, every vehicle belonging to the women was exactly where it should have been. Everything that suggested someone was home was there, except the people themselves. 3 women had disappeared. Not 1, not 2, 3, without a single witness seeing them leave, without anyone hearing screams, without anyone calling the police, without leaving behind a clear explanation. Even today, more than 30 years later, investigators still cannot say with certainty what happened inside that quiet house before dawn. And to understand why this case became so baffling, we have to go back to the night before. June 6th, 1992. Graduation day. Across Springfield, families gathered with cameras in hand. Students hugged classmates they'd known for years. Parents smiled proudly as another chapter of their children's lives came to an end. Among those graduates were 2 best friends, Susie Streeter and 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗀𝗶𝗴𝗵𝗁. Both were 19 years old. Like many teenagers that evening, they had only one thing on their minds: celebrate. The girls spent the evening driving between graduation parties, laughing with friends, and enjoying the excitement that comes only once in a lifetime. Witnesses, later, remembered nothing unusual about either of them. They laughed. They smiled. They made plans. There wasn't the slightest indication that anything was wrong. Originally, the 2 planned to spend the night at another friend's house. But as the evening wore on, plans began to change. There simply wasn't enough room for everyone. Rather than complicate things, Susie suggested something simple. They would spend the night at her home instead. It seemed like the easiest decision in the world. No one questioned it. No one imagined that one small change in plans would alter countless lives forever. Waiting at home was Susie's mother, Cheryl Levitt. At 47 years old, Cheryl had built a reputation as someone who genuinely cared about people. Friends often described her as welcoming, warm, and fiercely devoted to her daughter. She had recently spent time renovating much of the house herself. It wasn't just a place to live. It was home. Safe, comfortable, familiar. There was absolutely nothing about that house to suggest it would soon become the center of an investigation that continues to this day. Sometime after 2 o'clock in the morning, Susie and Stacy finally arrived home. Neighbors later reported hearing nothing unusual. No shouting. No arguments. No cries for help. If someone else came to that house, they came quietly. Police believe this may have been the last confirmed time anyone saw all 3 women alive. What happened after the front door closed remains one of the greatest mysteries in American criminal history. Morning arrived. For Stacy's family, it should have been an ordinary day. Plans had already been made. The girls were expected to leave for a water park with friends. As the morning passed and Stacy failed to arrive, concern slowly replaced patience. Friends decided to drive over to Susie's house. At first, nothing felt alarming. Teenagers often overslept after graduation night. But the moment they stepped inside, something felt strangely wrong. Not because the house looked destroyed, because it looked normal. Almost too normal. The television was still on. The family dog appeared healthy and relaxed. Beds showed signs someone had slept there. Personal belongings remained untouched. The women's purses had been left behind. Inside those purses were driver's licenses, money, cigarettes, lipstick, everything someone would normally carry before leaving home. Even more confusing, their car keys were still inside. Who voluntarily leaves home without their purse? Without their identification? Without their car? Without telling anyone? The questions began almost immediately. But before anyone thought about preserving evidence, something happened that investigators would later regret. Friends and family members began cleaning. One person swept up broken glass from the front porch. Another answered mysterious phone calls coming into the house before hanging up. Others walked through different rooms, searching for clues. No one realized they might be disturbing what could have been an important crime scene. At the time, they believed they were helping. Instead, some investigators would later wonder whether critical evidence had disappeared forever. By the afternoon, the concern had become impossible to ignore. 3 women, from the same house, gone. No explanation. No note. No confirmed sightings. No obvious suspect. And as police began searching the property, they quickly discovered something even more unsettling. There were almost no clues pointing in any direction. It was as though whoever was responsible had vanished along with them. By the afternoon of June 7th, 1992, Springfield police officially began treating the disappearances as far more than a simple missing persons case. 3 women had vanished from the same house. No one had seen them leave. No one had heard a struggle. And the house itself refused to give up its secrets. Investigators entered room after room, hoping to find something, anything, that could explain what had happened during the early hours of that Sunday morning. Instead, they found silence. The beds appeared to have been slept in. Nothing suggested anyone had packed for a trip. No luggage was missing. No handwritten note had been left behind. Their medications remained inside the home. Their clothing was still hanging neatly in closets. Everything pointed to one unsettling conclusion. Whatever happened, it happened unexpectedly. The first detail investigators focused on was the 3 purses. They hadn't been tossed onto the floor. They hadn't been emptied by a robber. They were placed together. Inside were driver's licenses, money, credit cards, personal belongings. It made no sense. If the women had willingly left the house, why would all 3 leave behind the very things they depended on every day? And if someone had forced them to leave, how had they managed to control 3 adults without leaving obvious signs of violence? That question would haunt investigators for decades. Outside, detectives carefully examined the driveway. All 3 vehicles remained exactly where the women had parked them. No tire tracks suggested another vehicle had sped away. No neighbors recalled hearing engines roaring through the quiet streets before sunrise. The neighborhood itself seemed frozen in time. People remembered going to bed. They remembered waking up. But almost no one remembered anything unusual happening between those two moments. It was as though the night had swallowed every answer. Then investigators turned their attention to the front porch. Friends had already mentioned sweeping away broken glass from the porch light earlier that morning. At first glance, it didn't seem important. Someone had accidentally broken the globe, covering the light fixture. Cleaning it up seemed like the right thing to do. But detectives immediately wondered, what if it wasn't an accident? What if the broken porch light had been one of the few clues left behind? Unfortunately, no one could say for certain. The glass was already gone. Whether it mattered or not, no one would ever know. Then there were the phone calls. Several people who entered the house that morning later recalled receiving strange calls while they searched for the missing women. The caller never identified himself. Instead, there was heavy breathing, silence, or inappropriate comments before the lines suddenly went dead. Believing the calls were nothing more than cruel prank calls, they hung up. No one recorded the number. No one kept the caller talking. Police were never able to determine whether those calls were connected to the disappearances, or whether they were simply an unfortunate coincidence. But in a case with so few clues, every possibility mattered. As word spread across Springfield, concern quickly turned into fear. This wasn't one missing person. This wasn't two. 3 women from different generations had vanished from the same home without leaving behind a single confirmed clue. Neighbors locked their doors. Parents kept children close. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some believed the women had left voluntarily. Others suspected a carefully planned abduction. Every theory seemed possible. Yet none of them explained the biggest mystery of all. How do 3 people disappear without waking an entire neighborhood? Police interviewed everyone they could. Friends from the graduation parties, family members, neighbors, former acquaintances, anyone who had spoken to Susie, Stacy, or Cheryl during the previous days. Most interviews led nowhere. No one described unusual behavior. No one reported serious threats. No one remembered seeing strangers following the women after graduation. The timeline remained frustratingly ordinary, until it simply stopped. As days became weeks, search teams expanded far beyond Springfield. Helicopters scanned wooded areas. Volunteers searched fields, rivers, abandoned properties, and remote roads. Missing person posters appeared across Missouri. Tips flooded into police departments. Hundreds of them. Some sounded convincing. Others fell apart within hours. Each new lead brought hope. Each dead end brought disappointment. Still, the women remained missing. Investigators eventually reached a painful conclusion. This wasn't a case they could solve with a single fingerprint or a forgotten witness. Whoever was responsible had either been incredibly lucky or incredibly careful. And just when detectives believed they were beginning to understand what might have happened, a new lead emerged. One that would send the investigation in an entirely different direction. Whether it was the break they had been waiting for, or simply another false trail, no one knew. As the days turned into weeks, the optimism surrounding the investigation slowly began to fade. Every morning, detectives arrived hoping that today would be different. That today would be the day someone remembered an overlooked detail, or a witness finally came forward. Instead, the mystery only grew deeper. The Springfield 3 had seemingly vanished without leaving behind a trail. No verified sightings. No physical evidence pointing to a suspect. No ransom demand. Nothing. For investigators, It was like trying to solve a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. Still, they refused to stop looking. Detectives retraced the women's final known movements. They revisited every graduation party, every gas station, every convenience store, every road they could have traveled that night. Friends were interviewed again, and then interviewed once more. Police hoped that repeating the same questions might uncover something someone had forgotten. But every answer remained the same. The girls had been laughing, enjoying graduation, making plans for the future. There had been no arguments, no threats, no obvious warning signs. If danger was waiting, no one saw it coming. As investigators dug deeper into the women's lives, rumors began spreading throughout Springfield. Some claimed Cheryl had recently received strange phone calls. Others believed Susie may have known someone involved in criminal activity. There were whispers about jealous relationships, dangerous acquaintances, even theories involving organized crime. But whenever detectives tried to separate fact from fiction, most of those stories collapsed under scrutiny. They produced speculation, not evidence, and speculation couldn't solve a disappearance. Then, the investigation took another unexpected turn. A local man came under increased scrutiny after making disturbing statements about the case. His comments caught investigators' attention because they appeared unusually specific. For a moment, police wondered whether they were finally getting closer. The man was questioned extensively. His background was examined. His movements were investigated. Yet despite the suspicion, authorities were never able to gather enough evidence to charge him in connection with the disappearances. Once again, the investigation reached another dead end. Months passed, then years. New detectives inherited the case from those who had originally worked it. Boxes of reports grew larger. Maps became covered with notes. Thousands of tips had now been received. Some came from psychics, others from anonymous callers. Many were investigated. Almost all led nowhere. One tip suggested the women had been seen in another state. Detectives followed it. It proved false. Another claimed the victims had been buried on private property. Search teams arrived. Nothing was found. Again, hope disappeared as quickly as it had arrived. Perhaps the most frustrating part of the investigation was this. No single theory explained every piece of the puzzle. If the women had left voluntarily, why leave behind everything they owned? If someone had abducted them, how had 3 adults been controlled without anyone hearing a struggle? If the crime had been carefully planned, why choose a neighborhood where so many people lived nearby? Every answer created another question, and every question reminded investigators just how unusual this case truly was. As the years passed, public interest never disappeared. Television documentaries revisited the mystery. Newspapers published anniversary articles. True crime investigators examined the evidence again and again. Each generation believed it might finally uncover the answer that had escaped everyone before. Yet, the mystery refused to break. Then came one of the most talked about theories in the history of the case. It was dramatic. It captured national attention. And for a brief moment, some people believed the mystery had finally been solved. But was it based on evidence? Or simply another heartbreaking possibility? That question would become the focus of the investigation's most controversial chapter. By the mid-1990s, the investigation had entered unfamiliar territory. Detectives were no longer chasing fresh evidence. Instead, they were chasing memories. Every anniversary brought new phone calls, new theories, new rumors. Each one offered hope. Each one ended the same way, with no answers. One of the most widely discussed leads centered on a parking garage near Cox Hospital in Springfield. Years after the disappearance, a local woman claimed that not long after the three women vanished, she had experienced an unsettling feeling while parking her car there. She later became convinced she had heard muffled cries for help coming from beneath the garage. The story spread quickly. Some believed the missing women had been buried beneath the concrete. Others argued there was no evidence supporting the claim. The parking structure was never excavated based on that allegation. To this day, it remains one of the most controversial theories connected to the case. Whether it represented a missed opportunity or simply another heartbreaking rumor, no one knows. Over the years, investigators also examined the possibility that the women had been abducted by someone they knew. There was no evidence proving they had willingly opened the door to a stranger. Perhaps they recognized whoever came to the house. Perhaps they trusted them. Or perhaps the person responsible found another way inside. Without physical evidence, every possibility remained exactly that. A possibility. There were other theories. Some believed the women had been taken by more than one offender. Others suggested the crime had been carefully planned long before graduation night. There were even claims that someone had confessed privately before later changing their story. Each lead was investigated. None produced enough evidence to explain what happened beyond reasonable doubt. As the years passed, the file continued to grow, but the truth remained out of reach. For the families, time never erased the pain. Birthdays came and went. Holidays passed with 3 empty seats. Friends grew older. Lives changed. Children became parents. Entire decades slipped away. Yet one question remained frozen in time. Where are they? The Springfield Three became more than an investigation. It became a symbol of how some mysteries refused to surrender their answers. Police departments changed. Technology improved. DNA analysis transformed criminal investigations across the country. Cases once considered impossible were finally solved. But this case remained stubbornly silent. Every detective who inherited the investigation hoped they would be the one to solve it. None could. Today, the disappearances of Cheryl Leavitt, Susie Streeter, and Stacey McCall remain unsolved. Authorities continue to encourage anyone with credible information to come forward, and the case remains open. Somewhere, someone may still know exactly what happened during those early morning hours in June 1992. Whether that truth is ever revealed, no one can say. But until that day comes, the Springfield Three will remain one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries. 3 women, 1 quiet neighborhood, 1 ordinary night, and a mystery that has endured for more than 3 decades. If you enjoyed this documentary and want to see more carefully researched true crime stories, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Whispered Pages, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new case. Because sometimes, the most terrifying stories are the ones that never truly end.